Alright guys, I recently picked up a Game Boy Color. This bad boy was released on November 18th, 1998. It's the successor to the original Game Boy, and the Game Boy Color, as suggested by the name, it features a color screen but no backlight. It's a little bit bigger and taller than the Game Boy Pocket, which was a redesigned original Game Boy in 1996. That came out in 1996. But it's a little bit bigger than that. The battery base sticks out in the back a little bit. It's got a custom 8-bit processor, somewhat related to the original CPU from the original Game Boy. But this guy is actually updated. It's a little bit faster than the original Game Boy. It's got 3 times as much memory. And it's definitely got, a bunch of different colors in comparison to the original Game Boy, which obviously was just that weird greenish whatever color. Game Boy Color's primary competitors were a lot more advanced than the actual Game Boy itself. There was the Neo Geo Pocket by SNK, and there was the Wonder Swan by Bandai. That was actually just released only in Japan. The Game Boy Color and the Game Boy combined smashed all the competitors, selling a combined 118.69 million units. Now, I want to get into a few of my favorite games. Now, the first game I want to talk about is Ducktales. Now, Ducktales is an awesome platformer. It takes a lot of its cues from its NES counterpart. It's an action platformer. It is developed and published by Capcom. Yes, the same Capcom who everyone knows for Resident Evil. It's based on a Disney animated TV series of the same name. Now, the story involves Scrooge McDuck. He's traveling around the globe, collecting treasure, trying to get rich, smacking bitches, getting hoes. No, but he's outwitting his rival, Flintheart Glomgold, to become the world's richest duck. Now, this game was made by a lot of the same people who were making all the Mega Man games at the time. And this game went on to sell over 1 million copies worldwide, becoming Capcom's best-selling title for both the NES and the Game Boy at the time. Most of the places that reviewed the game praised it for its tight control, its unique and non-linear gameplay, which is really cool for a Game Boy game. You can pick any of the levels to start out with. And some of the levels have things like a key that you might need to take to another level to go back and actually unlock an area and finish it. And that's pretty cool for a Game Boy game. And a game that came out in 1990. You didn't see elements of things like that where you could go to a level and figure some things out and go back to another level and it would help you out there. So on the ground, Scrooge can swing his cane to attack enemies and break open or throw certain objects. And when he's jumping, he can also use his cane to bounce around like a pogo stick. This comes in handy a lot. As you can see me doing it right here, I'm trying to get over this gap by using the pogo without touching those vines down there. They kind of hurt you. So this attack, this is used for movement and for attacking. You can kill enemies or move quickly and fastly over large gaps. It also allows you to reach higher areas as well as bounce across hazardous areas like you've seen me do a couple seconds ago there. Along the way, Scrooge can find various diamonds in some of these treasure chests and in certain areas, and this will actually increase your fortune in the game. Things like ice cream can restore your health. Scrooge encounters like a ton of different characters from the series in this. And a lot of them will actually give you like hints or offer up items or open up new areas for you. Or sometimes they'll even attempt to stop your progress and make you ask you questions or things like that. It's a pretty good game. It's one of my favorite Game Boy games. And like I said before, it's based pretty much the same exact thing as the NES game, except for lower resolution because it's on the Game Boy. The levels are slightly remixed because, once again, it's on the Game Boy. They had less space. But other than that, it's a really good game. I found it for $8, which is a decent price. You'll find it around $8 to $10 in the store right now anyways. But if you find it for less than that, definitely pick it up. It's a freaking 9 out of 10 game. Ducktales for Game Boy, one of the best. Make sure you... Not long after getting my Game Boy Color, I was on the prowl for a second game. And that game was Castlevania Adventure. Castlevania Adventure is a platform game released for the Game Boy in 1989. Now, it's the first Castlevania released for the system, and it's set a century before the events of the original Castlevania, which you might remember from the NES. So the player controls an ancestor of Simon Belmont named Christopher Belmont, who goes on a quest to defeat Dracula. The game consists of 4 stages, and it's kind of weird. Unlike other Castlevania games, there are no sub-weapons in this game. You do get hearts, but they're used to restore your health instead of like grabbing hearts to allow you to use a sub-weapon. They just restore some of your health. You get 3 lives, after which you got to restart the level if you die. So you restart the level every time you die at the very beginning. So it's a tough game. Your weapon can be upgraded. Your whip can be a chain whip or a flame whip. It also gets longer when you upgrade it, which is really good. Enemy damage also goes down, so you do less damage with the downgraded weapon. There's no stairs like in other Castlevania games, which is pretty weird. Like normally you gotta go up and down in stairs, and it's kind of like almost an enemy in itself inside of a Castlevania game, the stairs. It is missing some classic Castlevania enemies. I didn't see any Medusa heads when I was playing. Some of the boss encounters are kind of underwhelming. Something else unusual is there's a timer in this game. At the end of each level, there's a primary evil that you must confront. That's what the bosses are called. You can utilize crystals, hearts, and crosses of gold. The crosses kind of give you invincibility for a little bit. Additionally, there's a point counter for this game. At 10,000 points, you receive an extra life, and you'll receive one for every 20,000 points after that. Like I said before, this game has a time limit, and so each stage is timed, and you must complete it within the time limit, or you will lose a life. And this game, when it came out, it received kind of mixed reviews. A lot of people weren't sure how to regard it at the time, and they didn't like the difficulty, the long levels, and the fact that you only got 3 lives. It was just a few of the things that people kind of had gripes with. The graphics were thought to be confident, and the music most people thought was well composed, which I agree with. The music has a lot of memorable tunes. I mean, if you like Castlevania music, you're going to like this game. It is the Gameboy, which is pretty famous for the chip tunes and things that it can do. And despite its technical limitations, this is actually a really good game. It's amazing what they were able to do in 1989. I mean, it's you got to remember, this came out in 1989. There was no other Castlevania on a handheld yet, you know what I mean? Like, they were doing what they could do with the limitations they had at the time. So despite its shortcomings, this is a very decent game, I think. It regularly sells for between $15 and $20 loose. So if you can find it around there or cheaper, definitely pick it up. Alright, the next game on the list is Donkey Kong Land 2. This Game Boy game was released in 1996, and it's the sequel to the 1995 Game Boy hit Donkey Kong Land. Produced by Rare and published by Nintendo, Donkey Kong pretty much needs almost no introduction. Most people were familiar with Donkey Kong from Super Nintendo already, but Donkey Kong Land is a little bit different. So Donkey Kong Land 2 stars Kong and Dixie Kong in their conquest to, Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong in their conquest to rescue Donkey Kong from Captain K. Rool and the Kremling crew. That's a mouthful. While its stage names are borrowed from DK Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest, the level designs are all brand new. Donkey Kong Land 2 is the same storyline from DKC2, and the manual even contains a little simplified version of the same story from the Super Nintendo game, which is basically that K. Rool has kidnapped Donkey Kong, and he's hiding out at Crocodile Isle, and it's up to Diddy and Dixie to save him. When this game came out, Nintendo Power praised both the gameplay and the graphics, saying that they were done well and that the gameplay was very fun, but they criticized the similarities between the levels of this game and Donkey Kong Country 2. A different place, one named Nintendojo, gave the game an 8.5 out of 10, concluding that it's an extremely amusing adventure marred only by the annoying save system, which is kind of annoying. And so let me explain how that works. You've got to find these coins in each level, and then take them to the place on the map where you can save the game. And if you don't have 2 coins, you can't save the game. So you have to go to a level, get the coins, finish the level, and then go out and go save it. So that's pretty frustrating and annoying. But other than that, this is a pretty amazing game. I mean, the graphics are far beyond most of the other games for this system. I mean, the Super Nintendo version has pre-rendered backgrounds, and for the Game Boy game to look anything even close to that is freaking amazing. I mean, what they managed to do with this game is just straight up amazing. Donkey Kong 2 somehow holds on to some of the amazing visuals and a lot of the memorable music in this tiny, tiny Game Boy cartridge. Some of the visuals you'll see right now on screen is like, this is like a big ship, and you're basically climbing up the masts, and the visual fidelity, like I said, I keep saying, is just nice. I mean, I haven't seen very many Game Boy games that are able to cram that much detail in, except for Alone in the Dark. That game is something a little different, kind of a point and click game. But anyway, Donkey Kong Land 2, another really good game, another game you can find for about $15, 15 to $20. If you find it for cheaper than that, as always, pick it up. Alright, so last but certainly not least, we got Metroid II. Metroid II, Return of Samus, is an action-adventure video game developed and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy handheld game console. This is the second installment of the game and the first handheld title in the Metroid series. It was released in North America in November of 1991, and it continues the story of Metroid. Metroid 2, it follows the protagonist and playable character Samus Aran. She's sent on a mission to exterminate the Metroid creatures from their home planet of SR388, which is kind of fucked up. She's sent to their home planet to kill them. So she goes there to do that before these other people called the Space Pirates can get there and use the Metroids first. So on the one hand, she's going there and murdering them on their own planet. On the other hand, it's to kind of stop these other guys from getting the Metroids and using them. The gameplay of Metroid 2 involves killing a fixed number of the Metroids that you go around looking for. This is a super fun game. You go around the map, killing enemies, getting upgrades, looking for the different Metroids. Once you kill a certain amount of Metroids in an area, you unlock another area and you get to go farther in the game. This is a super fun mechanism of the game. It makes it very straightforward as to what to do and where you have to go. This Metroid was developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1, and it was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, who both worked on the first Metroid game for the Nintendo. Now, the developers of this game added round metal shoulders onto Samus's Varia suit to differentiate it from her power suit, since both look super similar on the Game Boy's limited grayscale display. The updated suit has since been a staple of the series, appearing in almost all of the subsequent games. Another thing that's kind of cool about this game is that they added a unique color palette for this game, for the Game Boy Color console, and which I already talked to you guys a little bit about the Game Boy Color and what that is. This game got a specifically cool looking color palette for it, and it's gotten generally favorable reviews over the years. Critics praised it for its story, for the very good setting, the handling of Samus herself. Some of the things that were criticized were the graphics, surprisingly, even though this is like a very early Game Boy game. Personally, I don't see the graphics as being too much of a problem. And then the audio. Audio is not really anything to write home about. I don't remember any issues with it, but I also don't remember anything too, too memorable either. Follow-up to this game was released for the Super Nintendo called Super Metroid in 1994. I also wanted to say that it being an action-adventure game, it's pretty damn long. I would say it takes a good 10 hours to beat this game. And I found this game, luckily, for, how much was it? I found this game for $3 at Goodwill. That's what it was. Went to a Goodwill, walked in there, $3. So this game usually runs between 10, 15, if you're unlucky, $20. So if you see it for less than that, definitely go out and pick it up. See what's going on with Metroid 2.